Oh, he's not here.
No.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the irregular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for November 25th, 2019. First off, we have a subdivision authority meeting to take care of, and I would call that meeting to order and ask for an adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Thames?
Mr. Mayor, I move that council adopts the agenda as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to agenda item number 3, the minutes for September 9th, 2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, these meeting minutes are here as presented for your consideration towards adoption.
All right. Anything arising? Councillor Garner?
Nothing arising.
All right. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner?
I would like to make a motion that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of the subdivision authority held on September 9th, 2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, related to the subdivision TT 19-0-007. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I'm going to call Ms. Monks up to make a presentation, please.
Ms. Monks.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. So this application for subdivision is to provide for a separation of title from a remainder parcel in Eureka, as well as then consolidating all of the existing parcels into one in order to facilitate the development of the Grasslands Taber Collaborative Project. This will provide for a single parcel consisting of 62.1 acres, 25.13 hectares for a land sale agreement. The application has been advertised in the Taber Times for 2 consecutive weeks and was presented to the Municipal Planning Commission at their November 18th meeting. MPC has recommended that the Subdivision Authority approve the application. No comments or concerns have been identified. Administration would seek approval of the subdivision in order to move forward with the subdivision and consolidation and future sale and development of the lands.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, you see the picture up there, and you can see the line that goes through the sewer line. That will be relocated underneath the roadway in this part of this here. For anybody that has any concerns about that that sewer line that goes through that property.
All right.
I believe that's Atlantic Sugars. I believe
That's correct.
Yeah, so that will be relocated.
Just a rerouting around that parcel.
Yeah, it'll go in the roadway that goes through there.
Great. Okay. All right.
That is a fact. It will be.
That was always the intention with the Eureka Area Structure Plan, to realign that underneath an existing roadway. And so those discussions have occurred with Lantic.
And at whose cost?
This will be at our cost. Would form part of the cost of the sale of land.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions arising? None whatsoever. Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, that the Subdivision Authority approves the subdivision application TT 19-0-007, part of Block X, Plan 7819AQ, and Lot 5, Block 4 plan, and I'm assuming there'll be new plan.
Yes,
There'll be new plan number there.
Correct.
With South Quarter Section, Section 8, Township Road 10, Ring 16, west of the 4th Meridian, with the following conditions 1 through 4.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Bruin.
I think Councillor Strobus meant south half section.
Sorry, did I not say that?
Quarter. Sorry.
Quarter, did I say? Oh, okay, south half.
South half is correct. You're accepting that friendly amendment.
I don't see so well anymore.
All right. All right. Friendly amendment. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now, so thank you. I just need a motion to close the meeting. Councillor Bruin.
Make the motion that would close this meeting.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried now, so thank you. And I will call the regular scheduled meeting for Taber Town Council to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Towns,
Move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Item number 3, adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of public hearing of a meeting of council November 12th, 2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, these are the public hearing meeting minutes from November the 12th for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council adopts the minutes of the public hearing meeting of council held on November 12th, 2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 3.2, minutes of regular meeting of council November 12th, 2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, for council's consideration, the next set of meeting minutes.
Right. Thank you. Any questions arising for those minutes? Councillor Bruin.
I'll make the motion that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting on council held on November 12th, 2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arise from the minutes. Item 4.1, community center lease spaces. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, administration thought we should make sure the record was straight with regards to some statements that were made at that meeting of November the 12th with regards to some facilities in the basement of the arena complex, community center complex. I don't know, would you like to come up, Don, and maybe, yeah. So Ms. Phillips will just address these comments that were made by a consultant.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Phillips.
Afternoon. So at the November 12th council meeting, RC Strategies presented the draft recreation master plan. And in his report, Mr. Schwartz recommended that the town discontinue use of the fitness space and the archery space in the community center. Following that meeting, we worked with the fire department and building maintenance departments to do inspections of those areas. The fire department did their inspection on November 15th and determined that there are no life safety concerns with either space. And building maintenance, the big concern that was brought forward by the architect was the ventilation, and they determined that we do have sufficient ventilation in those spaces. The architect assumed there was one furnace supplying fresh air to each space, and in fact, each space has 2 furnaces supplying fresh air. So administration has no safety concerns with continuing the use of these fitness and archery lease spaces, and we will continue to address life cycle and site improvements through our budget process and working with the lessees of each area.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Breckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased that you did the investigation, and I think it was very timely and prepared to make a motion.
All right, very well.
I'll move the council accept the information as provided.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 and 5.1 bylaws, proposed new bylaw 15-2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I believe Ms. DeBona is coming up for another round of our traffic bylaw.
DeBona.
Good afternoon, council.
Good afternoon.
So we have brought this bylaw a couple times now. We've been updating it with the Taber Police Service to follow our current standards and practices. There's been multiple additions and changes, but all of those have now been approved in different council resolutions and at previous meetings, the highlights of which I've included there in the package. So unless you have any further questions, if we could move to approval of the bylaw.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make the first motion. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council gives first reading to the proposed traffic control bylaw 15-2019 at this meeting.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And someone prepared to make the second motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you. I move that council gives second reading to the proposed traffic control bylaw 15-2019 at this meeting.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third required motion, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move that council unanimously agrees to proceed to third reading and final reading to the proposed traffic control bylaw 15-2019 at this meeting.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Hey. Further
You had a
discussion?
question?
Yes.
All right. Councilor Bruin.
I'm a little concerned about 3.06, the guidelines for candy distribution at parades. I've been to many parades and I've never really seen anyone walking along the sidelines handing out candy. So this is thing that bothers me a little bit. I think it's part of parades is throwing candy from floats. So just I want people to note that I'm in favor of that. We'll carry forward with this, but I want people to know I think that should not be on this.
Sir Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, unless it's unanimous, of course, we cannot proceed anyway.
That's correct. That's correct. All right. Anything else to add to that? Councilor Bruin?
Nope.
All right. Once again, the third required motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the fourth required motion. Councilor Firth?
I move that council gives third and final reading to the traffic control bylaw 15-2019 at this meeting.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great. Thank you. On to item 6, action items. Item 6.1, 2020 amended operating budget. Mr. Armfeld.
Yes, I'm going to call Mr. Orwa up to the mic, please. I think I'm going to let him carry on with the presentation, and I might chime in after he's done.
Sure.
Good afternoon, members of council. So at the previous regular meeting of council, council directed administration to balance the 2020 operating budget by reducing the expenses in the amount of 221,000. So we did that and we did balance the budget, but we decided to dive deeper just to make sure that at least we have some additional funds out there to throw back into the reserves to cushion us in case things go south. Now, what I mean by things going south is at this point, we are not very sure of which direction the assessment will take. Because the budget is balanced with the projected numbers, as you've seen. But when assessment comes up in April, the assessment can either go down, or the assessment can be up, or the assessment can be flat. And when the assessment goes down, that means we have to increase our mill rates to a level whereby we maintain our status quo before you even think of increasing the mill rates. And if it goes the other way around, then we can also see. So based on those analyses, the administration decided to go ahead and have some budget cuts, which of course I've outlined out there, ranging from a reduction of 5% on council remunerations. Then we're looking at the management wage freeze, step increases in 2020. And then we're also looking at reducing the trips to one person heading to Japan. And then we also looked at other areas which gave us an additional 200,000. So based on that, we've balanced our budget today.
Great, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Armfeld through Mr. Orwa. Did you build in an automatic 2% tax increase into the proposed budget?
So what I did with this budget is I did build 2% increase on revenue. That is looking at the revenue, net tax revenue from the previous year to the current year. So I built in there the 2%. The only thing that will throw me off is the assessment. And I'm hoping that the assessment will not throw me off to a level whereby I have to again think deeper. But if it doesn't, then there's that 2% increase in revenue that has been built in there.
And to add to that, we do that primarily because of the consumer price index. The consumer price index goes up approximately 2%. I'm just looking right now, November the 20th from October to October of 2019 in Alberta it went up 1.6%, nationally 1.9%. So council has to consider that if you are not keeping up with the consumer price index, we're actually decreasing the level of service that we are providing to residents. And then we're looking at actually cutting deeper than just staying at par 1 year to the next. So that's why your administration considers that about 2% increase 1 year to the next. We have a look at the consumer price index and determine how we can keep the level of service flat from 1 year to the next. Now, with what we have done with the additional cuts we've made, from 120,000, we've gone up to about 180,000. That does give council, in between a 0.5 to 1 point consideration on that tax rate potential when it comes to April or May of 2020, when we actually know what that assessment is going to look like. So that is a few details on why we automatically build in that 2%, is just to keep services flat, and then we hope that the assessed values are consistent with that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Armfeld. Mr. Orwa, I do understand the most budgets are set by either growth and or inflation, or the combination of both, and I can accept that. But I see when you dove deeper, Mr. Orwa, like your word, dove deeper, you said it was a $57,000 surplus in your diving, right? So that's about 0.6%, I believe, something like that. So I would propose that we look at maybe a 1.5% increase as opposed to a 2%, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thames?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I've never been in favor of zero, because zero means you're going nowhere, and it eventually that'll catch up to us really bad. I could live with 1.5. I don't think 1 would be it. Councillor Beckering is suggesting 1.5. I think, I could live with 1.5. I don't think we can go any lower than that, because it just is going to cause, it'll sound nice this year, but it'll just cause nothing but grief. Eventually you got to catch up, and it'll cause nothing but problems. So I could live with 1.5, but no less.
All right, just to clarify, Mr. Harper, you were saying the 1.6, that is a provincial level right now?
Yeah.
And the 1.9 was national.
Yeah, so what we have done is, with the additional decreases that we've made in the operating costs, to go from 220,000 to about 280,000, that does give you approximately the half of the percent that you're looking at. It's really too, I would say it's too far away from next year to forecast and to send us back to the drawing board now. What we could do that, because what we've done with that additional whatever it is, 60,000, is we've suggested that go towards capital reserves. If council was to keep, if everything was to stay as we're all assuming it was going to stay, CPI goes up 2%, land values go up 2%, and then everything is even with where we forecasted it, then that extra dollar that we've cut deeper could go towards capital reserves. Or council in May of 2020 can make the decision to not put that into capital reserves and use that to decrease the tax rate. So we've provided council with those options.
Right, okay, thank you. Anything else arising? All right, so with that, I think, Councillor Becker, you looking to make a motion in that regard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not particularly, because I think if the understanding is among council and administration understands that just because you put money into a capital reserve doesn't mean you can't take it out. So if that's what happens next year when we get surprised by our assessments, which I think we will be surprised at, we can always take it out.
Yeah, and to follow up, nothing has gone in. This is just a piece of artwork that we're putting out there as a best guess of what the finances are going to look like next year. So nothing's gone in or out of anywhere. This is simply a Mr. Orwa's fine piece of art for what 2020 might look like.
Just to clarify, Mr. Orwa, the key is to find out what this assessment is actually going to be, and we don't find that out until May.
Yeah, next year around April.
Right, okay, great, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So should I address Mr. Orr as Michelangelo, or what should I do? I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
That council directs the CAO to amend Schedule A of the council remuneration procedure C2 to reduce all monthly base salaries by 5%. It pains me to say that. Number 2, that council directs the CEO to freeze in management wage step increase in 2020. That council rescinds resolution 552-2019 regarding sending the mayor, one councillor, and the chief administrative officer to Higashimi, Japan. That council approves the 2020 amended budget as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good, thank you. On to item 6.2, 2020 amended capital budget. Mr. Armfelt.
Yeah, so we had a in-camera discussion at the last meeting with regards to the reality of the provincial cuts and the cuts that we would have to make to the 10-year capital plan for 2020. This list is reflective of those cuts. There were a couple of questions that council had. One was in relation to the roof at the curling rink specifically. We can explore that. That's not on this capital budget. It's been dropped on the recommendation of building maintenance. But anyway, it's just opening the floor for council questions here on this capital plan.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prefer to make a motion?
Just a comment before we make a motion. Just with one amendment to the capital, if you can scroll up a little bit for me for 2020. The 2021. So there's just one amendment that I would like to draw your attention to. That is that half-ton truck. I think there was a request from Public Works that that be changed to side trailer for DNC. Is that correct, Mr.?
Okay. To a what trailer?
Site equipment trailer. They have no place to store tools or bring anything on.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, that's the only adjustment, Mr. Roy?
Yes, please.
All right. Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council endorses the 5-year capital plan as presented with strategic amendments to continue from year to year, and that council approves the amended 2020 capital budget as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table.
With the change of the half-ton to a equipment trailer.
Mr. Armfelt, did you have another question or comment? Just okay. All right. All right.
I seen that coming.
All right. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.3, golf course mower. Mr. Armfelt.
Yes, at the September 9th meeting, representatives from the Tabor Golf Club came to council to request some financial assistance for the purchasing of 2 mowers. We have had some informal feedback from some of council, and we thought we would try this recommended motion going forward as a third of the cost. Of course, it's up to council to make the final decision. Just bringing this back to facilitate that conversation and a possible decision.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship. Question for Mr. Orwa. What do we have left in our? I think we have 39,000 left in our council discretionary fund.
That's correct. Plus less the last motion, which of course is we do not know exactly. The wet surfaces carpeting at the recreation area. I don't know exactly what that number is, but based on that number, it will be 39,000 less whatever we'll spend out there. Do you have any idea?
No, sorry, we don't.
Like order.
If it's 2,000, then we'll have 37,000 left.
Okay, well then I want to put this to the rest of council, being that we've got $37,000 sitting in the council discretionary fund, that we allocate the remaining funds, whatever is in there, if it's 37 and change or 37, to purchase this mower and to add $18,000. So it'd be 37 and 18 would take them up to the $55,000 to the purchase of that mower, and then that'll clean up our council discretionary fund for the balance of the year. It'll net out at zero. It doesn't affect the budget. The only thing that would affect would be the $18,000 from the 37 to the 55, and then that gives them the new mower, and it gives them gives them a heads up going the next couple of years. So they've got good equipment there.
All right, and just to clarify, that the third was a suggestion to go with just the third solely for that amount, Mr. Roy?
Suggestion was that they requested 110,000, and that 110 was to be divided between three groups, and that is how we ended up with the 36,000.
Worship, just for clarification, when the presentation was made to us, it was made to us on the basis of that it would be the MD and the town would split that 110, 55,000 apiece. That's what the presentation was. This third came from inside council discussion, but I'm recommending that we go back to their original presentation and do the 55. And presumably the MD would also kick in 55 for them, and then it's clean, and if it's off, it's gone. It's out of our books, and we've helped them out.
All right, thank you. Councillor Garner?
My comment on that is the going with a tripartite type of system gives the people at the golf course some ownership moving forward when they need maintenance done on these things that they're invested in it. When we dole out money without them being an active participant in their own equipment, I don't think that's wise.
Your Worship, I would like to comment to that. I think those people at the golf course, the board, do it gratis. They work on a very tight budget. They put their heart and souls. Volunteers help them all the time to maintain that place. They've got a lot of skin in the game out there. And, you know, they just completed a casino that gave them, covered their operating loss for the current year and gave them some cash flow into next year. And I think we would be doing a disservice by doing it a three-way split, because it'll give them the option of proceeding forward for the next couple of years, knowing that they've got some money to play with.
All right, Councillor Tanos?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't golf due to the fact that I got a bad back and I'm just going to hurt myself. So, you know, and yet I believe that the golf course is a tremendous recreation facility within the town of Taber, the MD of Taber. And I am of the expressed opinion that, along with Councillor Strovis, that the request was for $55,000. My only concern is if we give them 55 and the MD doesn't, they're still not going to get ahead. I think that it has to be agreed that they're going to get both. That's my only concern. And I don't have a problem taking the rest from the council discretionary fund and the other 18 from capital, whatever them numbers add up to be. But I think that there has to be some caveat that we're not just funding it ourselves. That's my concern.
All right, thank you.
Your Worship, I think you have to remember that the MD is going through the same thing, and there is a talk that they will be allocating, you know, funds, but you know, it's a golf course in the town. You drive into the town, you can see it's nicely striped, it's nicely laid out. It's from the west, and you come to town. I don't think our decision should be contingent on what the MD is gonna or not gonna do. This will give them a good mower to proceed ahead, and I think we need to endorse that plan for them.
Thank you. Anything else? No other questions, comments? All right. So,
And your Worship, I'm
just sorry. Mr. Armfield, you had a comment?
I believe there was a motion made. Of course, that's your call whether you call it a motion or not. But I
clarify that, yeah.
I did not hear a funding source for the other 18,000.
Correct.
And so that's what we were looking for.
I was just about to clarify that Councillor Strobel said that was your formal motion and/or what that funding.
I'll formalize it in. That was something I threw out for some discussion from the rest of council, but I will formalize it into a formal motion that the council approves the funding in the amount of $37,000 to the Taber Golf Course to be taken from the council discretionary fund, and allocates $18,000 to come out of capital reserves to complete the $55,000 purchase.
Just, sir, Councillor Strauss, just to clarify, for the golf course.
Yes, for the golf course. Mower. Sorry, for the golf course mower.
Councillor Tams, you had a question?
Yeah, just would you consider a friendly amendment that after we have the funding from our council discretionary fund, that it's the leftover balance from the council discretionary fund and the remainder from the capital reserve? That way that fund, council discretionary fund is all spent.
Yes, that you know, I don't know if we need an exact amount in there, but I would agree to that friendly amendment so that it clears that up and brings it to net zero.
55,000 total.
55,000 total, and to clean up the council discretionary fund to whatever 37 and change, whatever that works out to be, because we've got an outstanding invoice there, and the balance, approximately 18,000, come from capital reserves.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify for administration, is that clear all the way around? Or is there something?
Yeah, the motion is suitable to me and the recommendation is suitable to me, and certainly can process that. Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, government deals presentation. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, is it Ms. Dam? So we've changed up a bit of our surplus sales to try to generate some more interest. Ms. Dam, you can explain to council what we're doing there?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick update on what we are doing now. So the town of Taber is going to be using GovDeals, which is an online auction for government agencies to post surplus assets. This way we are able to reach more users for our surplus assets. GovDeals has over 750,000 registered buyers already. So when assets are available and we have excess assets for the town that we're not using and are able to be sold, they're going to be posted on the first of every month to www.govdeals.com/TaberAV. This can also be found on the Town of Taber's website under Doing Business, then Public Competitive Bids, then Surplus Equipment Sales / Auctions. So if there's a buyer that wishes to purchase all of the items that are available on the Town of Taber's website, they do close 15 minutes apart, so they have access to each of the items. And then to avoid people bidding last second and just getting the item at that price, whenever someone posts a bid, if it's like within your last very end of the asset closing, there's going to be 3 minutes added on every single time there's a bid put on. So this encourages a bidding war between two people. So I'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Tams?
Who's responsible for if you have it on an auction site and the person that bid does not pay? Is that our problem or is it Government Deals' problem?
Yeah, GovDeals is going to be in charge of all the financing. So they have, I think it's within 5 days to pay for the asset. And if they do not pay for it, then it's taken away and then it's still the Town of Taber's asset. So then we'll just post it to another auction.
But do we pay this 7.5%
No,
on that?
only when
or
it's
just
sold.
on the final sale?
Just in the final sale.
All right. Thank you.
Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dam, are there other communities in South Alberta that are doing this, do you know?
Yep, so the city of Blackbridge is doing this currently right now. And then there are a couple other, Grand Prairie is one of them. On the GovDeals liquid service marketplace, there are 10 just in Canada on that are doing it right now that are listed, but there are more agencies. And this way the assets will be available, but this is also between Canada and the United States. So if there are buyers in the US that wish to purchase these things, it opens it up to more buyers.
Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, what is our current method of disposing of excess assets?
So the Town of Taber has all the assets together, and then we host a physical auction. So we wait until there's enough assets together, and then people physically come in and bid for them.
Thank you.
Councillor Barone.
What concerns me with this is who's eligible to use the government deals. It's if you read that spot there, I couldn't go and buy something from the town.
Yeah, sorry, that might be a little bit confusing. Anybody is available to be a registered buyer. Only government agencies are able to post assets, but anybody, like someone.
It's open to public.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Heck, I can answer that. You actually have to go in and create an account. Just no different than going to Ritchie Brothers or any other auction house.
It's just not clear here.
Yeah, you have to. The Government Deals. You just have to go create your own account. But you have to do that. And give them their information. They want that first, but you're just creating an account, just like Ritchie
Yeah, it's
Brothers.
just not clear here. When you say this, it says no. So
Right. Any other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thames?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, move that council accepts the government deals presentation for information purposes.
Motion on the table. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. Is there an upset price on these?
Is there a set price?
Upset price. So if you value an asset at $2,000 and it only brings 500,
Yeah.
are you bound to sell it?
No. So the town of Tabor has the ability to set a minimum price, and then prices for how much they're allowed to bid increase go by. So if we have a truck that's worth $5,000 and we don't want to accept anything less than $5,000, we can make the minimum price $5,000.
It's called upset.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion?
I did make the motion.
Oh, sure. So you did. That's right. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good, thank you. On to item 6.5, tax receivable write-offs. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, I'm going to hand this one over to Mr. Orwa again.
Mr. Orwell.
Very much again, members of council. So we have an issue here with one particular role. There's an outstanding tax of about $276. And it's likely, most likely that we'll not be able to collect this thing. Now, the reason being, the company behind this has already been declared bankrupt. And I think we've had so many correspondence from MNP that was appointed as the receiver manager. And it sounds like nothing's going to come through. Now, I did share my concern with our next door neighbor, because I think they're also concerned about this particular company. They have lost thousands of dollars as well. And I think they've gone to court and nothing was collected. And again, this is something that deals with lien assessment, and the province has also stopped doing any lien assessment because this is part of those pipelines that went through those abandoned wells. So the court process would cost us even more money, and there's no guarantee that we're going to collect anything from this company because they're already bankrupt.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Bruin?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that council writes off the tax receivable for roll 100070 in the amount of $276.57.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion?
Sorry, I'm just seeing that there's a 1 in front of the 7 in the background and not in the recommendation. I just caught that. Do we know which one is correct?
Motion is correct.
Okay. Continue then.
Sorry. I might have missed a zero, but I'm pretty close.
No, we're good then.
You are good.
If the recommended motion is correct, we're okay.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.6, third quarter financial statements. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, we had our audit committee meeting last week sometime. I forget exactly which date. It was a Tuesday, I think. Anyway, the financial statements were approved by the audit committee. Mr. Orwa, please present.
Very much again. So before you is the unaudited financial statements that had already been dissected by the audit committee. So unless maybe there are questions, we'll be able to respond.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Garner.
I can make that motion, Your Worship. The council accepts the unaudited financial statements for the 9-month period ending September 30th, 2019 for information purposes.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.7, proposed signing or authorization policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, I believe Ms. Dam is coming up to present this one. By way of a bit of an opening, I've been wanting to have this policy and procedure in place since I became CAO a little over 2 years ago now. I guess there's a lot of things that come to my desk for signing that I feel could be delegated down to the director level because they're part of normal business practices and they've been approved through the budget. And so ultimately that's the intent of this policy and procedure, is to remove some of those obligations from things that come to my desk that need to be signed that are really day-to-day business practice sort of items. Ms. Dam, if you want to take it from there.
So signing or authorization of municipal documents policy and procedure is outlining who is authorized to sign which municipal documents within the town of Taber. This policy and procedure now provides clarities to staff. So for example, if we have a new director come into the town of Taber and they're not exactly sure which documents they're able to sign and are not, this will provide clarity to them. And it also delegates authority to provide a more efficient and business-like approach.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Armfeld, I'm not opposed to this at all. But what safety items might you put in place that in case something does go awry that you're aware of it? So if a director would sign documents erroneously, how would you become aware that down the road? Would you be would there be a check and balance, for example?
It's hard to answer that, right? I mean, these are things that are in process and that are in progress, right? Chemicals purchased for the wastewater treatment plant, surveyor that we're engaging to do some work for land development. The directors will always have the option to not sign it. I guess that's probably the best answer that I can give. If there's any question, I would certainly encourage them to err on the side of caution and send it my way for a conversation prior to endorsement. But the real intent here is just for the day-to-day sorts of purchases. And the directors, I don't micromanage. The directors have to be accountable for their actions. We have regular meetings in that regard. So there is some risk, I suppose, that a director could go rogue and all of a sudden buy a bunch of widgets that we don't need, and then the accountability factor kicks in at that point. But really, this is for efficiency, and it's for the ability for the directors to become more efficient and be more receptive to our clients, especially on the land side, land use planning and the sales of the endorsements of easements, all those sorts of things. Some of these things can sit in my inbox. Once they get to me, it'll be a week or two down the road, and then they're 3 weeks getting back for an approval for an easement, for an example, which is just, I don't think, is efficient for our clients or, has a level of customer service. So if there is a mistake, I suppose any of us can make it. Thinking about it, the opposite's probably the fact that I'm more inclined to make a mistake on something technical like that than the director is, because I'm so far removed, I don't know what's going on. And so there was an example today where I was signing documents where I had to phone and find out, what is this for? Why are we doing this? And it's, oh, that's what it is. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. So I'll endorse it. But so I mean, it's just we're in business. We make decisions. Sometimes they're right. We try to keep the mistakes to a minimum, but they happen. And if they happen in this event, it's not going to be for a big ticket item because it's already an ongoing thing which has been approved by council. So it's not like, somebody's going to go and buy a truck and I'm not going to know about it, as that would hit the audit committee and then the alarms would go off, of course, right? So.
Mayor, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor
the
Broom.
only question I have, is there a limit on to this, what they're allowed to sign, monetary?
Yeah, so we had to wait to move this forward until council was satisfied with the purchasing policy. So that purchasing policy that came through and was endorsed at the last meeting, that sets the limits on purchasing. And so this is really just a partner policy to go along with that policy from last meeting that set the limits on purchasing, that council has the final say on things over 75,000. Then there's under 75,000 up to $10,000. So there's the graduated approval requirement in that purchasing policy. And then this policy dovetails with who can then actually sign and approve those purchases, rather than they're all coming to my desk for endorsement.
Thank you.
Right. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approves the proposed signing or authorization policy and procedure ADM-10 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.8, recognition of service employee policy. Mr. Armfield.
This is a policy that's coming forward for amendment, and probably gives Ms. Van Ham an opportunity to speak on it. But we've had some very long-standing casual employees at the town that have not been recognized as per the normal staff recognition procedures because they've been left out of the policy. And the two main areas where we have long-standing casual employees are at the Aquafund Center and the jail guards. So the impact budget-wise per year is quite minimal, like within a few $100s max. But the recognition and the appreciation of these people's service is significant, in my opinion, that the municipality appreciates the work that they do, especially with the long-standing jail guards that have been with the town for so long, that come in at the drop of a hat and do that work for the town. And I think it's just our duty that we recognize their level of commitment.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, I read this and I totally get it. I'm prepared to make a motion that council authorizes recognition of service employees policy C1 as presented. Very good work.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 6.9, aquatic supervision policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I might call Ms. Phillips up to discuss this one, please.
Would you like Ms. Ostrop to join me?
Sure.
Hello, members of council and mayor. This is my first time speaking, so sorry if I'm a little nervous. So with new management in our department came new eyes and some new questions about our policies and unwritten rules. So one of our unwritten rules being kids under the age of 6 needing to be within arm's reach of an adult at all times while in the water. Life Saving Society promotes that children under the age of 8 must be accompanied by the caregivers that is 13 years or older. We as administration have completed a survey to see what other facilities are doing, as aquatics rely heavily on industry standards. The survey showed that 73% of other facilities follow a minimum of 8, the age of 8 to swim alone, and the age of the caregiver was split between 14 years old being 50% and 16 years old being or at 36.5%. We as administration are proposing that we change our policy to industry standards. Children under the age of 8 must be accompanied by a caregiver that is 16 years or older. We do recognize that we are going to have some pushback from the public, but we are hoping that with lowering our accompanying age to 16 instead of 18 will help soften that jump from 6 to 8. We also know that we're going to be having that pushback from the public. We do have a lot of information, or we're hoping to have a lot of information for new policy to be put out to the public. So information from Life Saving Society, like what has been attached in your guys' information, and we're hoping to get that out to the public as soon as possible if this is our push to go forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this subject was discussed extensively at the last Recreation Board meeting, and the Recreation Board voted unanimously, as you can see, to adopt this new policy, and I think it's a very good one. Thank you.
Yes.
I just realized I didn't change the date. If we could have it effective January 1st so that Corey has an opportunity to educate the patrons over the month of December.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion that council approves the proposed aquatic supervision policy PS-REC-1111 as presented effective January the 1st. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the year would be
2020.
Preferable. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question. So when there's a birthday party and you have children there, so you need one person can supervise, or how does that work?
So as it states right now, so we can have one caregiver to 5 children under the age, and we would like to keep that going. In the policy, we did have under the discretionary of the aquatic supervisor, if we have a swim club, bigger rentals, birthday parties, that kind of stuff, then it would come down to the aquatic supervisor's direction. But more adults around, even on the pool deck, helps out the lifeguards as well for that safety supervision on the pool deck as well.
Absolutely. So it's 1 to 5 then?
1 to 5 is what we have now, and we would like to keep going forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 610, ice surfaces allocation policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, again, Ms. Phillips, please go ahead.
I have a few policies. The second policy is the ice surfaces allocation policy, and this is just reviewing an existing policy. Administration did make one change to the previous policy, which will allow ice user groups to cancel ice on December 1st for the remainder of the season. Right now, once they book, they're booked in. They can't cancel ice, I believe, after October 1st. But their schedule is largely determined by their league, and retiering is not finalized until the end of November. So sometimes minor hockey had indicated to us that they get a lot of dates that they don't need, but they've booked and now they have to pay for them. So what we're recommending in the policy change is that December 1st, one day only, basically, that on that day you can return ice for the remainder of the season. And we are confident, especially with social media, that we'd get many of those, if not all of those ice times booked out to other user groups. This did go to the rec board as well and was supported at that level.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
I'm prepared to make that motion that council approves revision to the proposed ice surfaces allocation policy PS-REC-8 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 611, patron discipline action policy. Mr. Armfield.
Ms. Phillips.
Again, this is a policy review of an existing policy, other than being updated. I don't think there was actually any changes to this one, and it was again brought to the rec board on November 7th and supported at the rec board.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approves the proposed patron disciplinary action policy revision PS-REC-10 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, on to item 612, recreation facilities signage policy. Mr. Armfield.
Ms. Phillips.
Again, this is an existing policy. The policy was updated and reformatted. We did make one amendment to the previous policy to include the previously discussed memorial and recognition of citizens requests that come to either the rec board or council level. So any of those types of more the plaque requests, not the bigger ones, would fall under this policy. And it was brought to the rec board on December 7th and supported.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Tams.
I move that council approves the proposed recreation facility signage policy revision PS-REC-9 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 613, collection of refundable beverage policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Phillips.
This final policy. The collection of refundable beverage containers policy was put into place in 2016 with the intention that a user group would be chosen to receive the cans and bottles in the parks with the recycle and garbage bins. The policy was not very effective the first year. They tend to get picked. People have nice sticks they grab the cans out of there, and I believe they made $50 the first year, so it hasn't been continued. So administration is recommending that we repeal this policy as it's been discontinued. Again, it was brought to the rec board on December 7th and supported by the rec board.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Chavez?
Chip, I'm prepared to make the motion that council repeal the collection of refundable beverage containers policy PS-Rec-4.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 614, policy proposed for repeal finance. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Dam, I think, is going to lead us through each of these. Again, we would like each policy to be rescinded on each motion. Please, Ms. Dam.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. So administration is requesting the repeal of the 4 policies below. I'm just going to run through them quick and then open the floor for any questions. So cancelled receipts is an internal process that is already covered in our internal procedural manual for the front desk and receptionist. The investment income stabilization policy no longer suits the town of Tabor's budget model, and the funding is not distributed as this policy dictates. And then the policy in investment income stabilization prepaid services receipts is no longer applicable because the town of Tabor does not distribute funds as indicated in this policy. And the subsidization and recovery formula is no longer applicable because this funding model is no longer used. It was deemed unreachable by the Recreation Board, and the fee structure regarding recreation fee schedules is now covered under the fee bylaw.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Beckering.
Yes, thank you. Could you repeat that? No. I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
That council repeals cancel the receipts policy number 5S-79827.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Barone.
I'll make the next motion, Mr. Mayor, that council repeals investment income stabilization policy number 43C-9/24/90.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And motion number 3 required. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that council repeals policy investment income stabilization prepaid services receipt policy number 2C-68/83.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. And the 4th required motion, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council repeal subsidization and recovery formula policy number 7C-133/81.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 615, department reports. Digitally, and if you have any questions, please advise accordingly. Starting with the fire department report. Engineering and Public Works. Water and wastewater. Councillor Bruin.
With the influent and effluent flow, we dropped to 0 there on the 29th of October. Why?
We were just bypassing to the lagoons because we had seed sludge to be our.
Okay, that's why we dropped off there.
That one for
Mr. Towns?
Yep. Also, there's enzyme used in downtown core to help with lard buildup.
That comes from the fat from the restaurants. Basically, we just sort of enzyme down, breaks it up, and helps it move down the pipes.
Are they still allowed to dump the fat down the sewers?
We try to track it, but we can't catch it.
Thank you.
All right.
Anyway.
On to finance activity reports. Recreation report. Administrative service report. CAO reports. HR activity report. Plan and economic development reports. All right, I'm prepared to make a motion. Councillor Garner.
To make a motion at this time that council accepts the department reports for information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We are now on to mayor and council reports. Start with Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, November was busy. I attended the fall supper for both the United Church and the Catholic Church, the Remembrance Day service, which was very well attended, so much so that there was standing room 2 deep, which was really nice to see. Also served lunch at Parkside Manor with the rest of council. Thanks to Councillor Stravos for organizing that. 2 coffee with councils, the sod turning event with the Grasslands Tabor Collaborative, the library Christmas Jingle Craft Sale, and Queer 101 that was put on by the Tabor Equality Alliance, as well as all the other required meetings. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended all the meetings I was supposed to attend, plus a few more, but not as many as Council Firth.
Thank you. Councillor Towns.
Didn't make all my meetings, but most of them, but I have a comment that I'd like to pass on to the rec committee or whoever looked after the auditorium for the Remembrance Day ceremony. The twist ties and tying the chairs together at the end of the aisles was fantastic this year. It kept the aisleway clean and had plenty of room for the standing people. We just need to get a second floor because we need way more chairs there. So, but it was a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the first annual Winterfest and enjoyed that. Attended and was the sous chef next to Chef Stroas at the seniors dinner that we did. And connected to that, I also learned Councillor Stroas' secret gravy recipe. And I attended all necessary meetings, attended the Queer 101 presentation, and also attended Coffee with Councils.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravos.
Yes, Your Worship. Again, I'd like to thank my fellow councillors that came out and helped prepare the food for Parkside Manor. They were so impressed they would like us back again next year and maybe a couple times next year. So you know that it was well appreciated. The Remembrance Day service, I think it was one of the largest crowds that I've ever been at. It was, like I said, it was double deep or all the way around the outsides there. So that was excellent. And of course, it was great to be at the sod turning for our new facility in Eureka Park there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
I attended all the aforementioned things. The Queer 101, I learned there's a lot of different names for a lot of different people. Highway 3 executive meeting, I've been busy with that. The Remembrance Day service was phenomenal, and I was very proud to say that or be with the group that was there, and there was a lot of people there. Parkside Manor lunch, Joe, with your direction, we served a beautiful lunch, and I think we should all be proud of that. The sod turning event, of course, and everything else I was supposed to attend, I attended, and then some more.
As for myself, November busy month as well. Attended the Veterans Dinner prior to Remembrance Day, as well as November 11th Remembrance Day. Also participated in the Seniors Dinner at Parkside Manor. Attended the Heart Ceremony, the Honor and Allies Remembrance Together ceremony at the Lethbridge Armory. Also part of the sod turning and press conference for the Grasslands Tabor Cooperative. Attended the SACA Low German Mennonite Conference at the Heritage Inn regarding cultural awareness, as well as a library Christmas concert. That would be my report. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council accepts the mayor and councillor reports for information.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 6.17, standing item, council requests. Nothing, Mr. Armfelt, for follow-up. Some are still in the works, I believe, correct?
Tim. Yeah, so the last one there, administration is looking into carpeting. That should be buttoned up on the next week, I would say. And that's the only one we're working on right now.
Thank you. Anything new on anybody's horizon? All right. There's no requirement for any motion. We're just carrying on with what was on the books currently, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that, we're on to delegations next. So I would ask for the motion for the 30-minute break, please.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Tanis, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried now. Thank you.
Yes, we're waiting for you, Counselor.
Okay, that fits in. That one fits in.
There's another one for you. I am.
That's what we've heard.
All right. To get a motion to reconvene the meeting, please.
I can make that motion, Mayor.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Get out. Okay. All right. On to delegations item 7.1. Presentation to Blakely Zudoff. Mr. Armfelt.
Yeah, so if I could have Miss Blakely Zudoff come forward with maybe one of her parents, please. So there's a pretty special opportunity tonight. As part of the policies that we have at the town, we've been reviewing policies lately. One of them indicates that if a citizen finds money, that they are to take that money and they are to turn it over to Taber Police Service. And then after a period of time, if nobody comes to claim that money goes into the operating reserve of the town of Taber. So it's very rare that we get a display of integrity that we have in front of us this evening. That Miss Blakely Zudoff did find $100 last summer, I believe, in the park out here, and returned that money to the Taber Police Service, hoping to have the owner hooked up with their cash again. That did not happen, so that money then did get turned over to the town of Taber, and we thought it fitting to recognize Miss Blakely with a bit of a presentation here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor Prokop, to take us through that formality.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Armfelt, and welcome, Ms. Zudoff. Appreciate your attendance. And just to reiterate what Mr. Armfelt said, we are very appreciative of all you've done. And I don't know if you know just how much involved this is with for someone at your young age to do this. It's actually a requirement under the Municipal Government Act for anybody that finds anything that doesn't belong to them is supposed to be turned into the police service for attempts to find the rightful owner. And should that not happen, as he said, the item or items are turned over to the municipality for dispersal. So through Senior Constable Dubé's suggestion, and I believe he was a gentleman you were dealing with, and you originally found the $100 bill and gave that over to Senior Constable Dubé, and he followed through with the 3 months requirement and turned it over to the town as per the policy requirements. So we can't say how impressed enough how we are for what you've done there, and it shows high integrity and great character, and obviously good upbringing, great upbringing actually by your parents to instill that kind of mindset and doing the right thing. So we all thought that at the very least we could do something for yourself, and we certainly appreciate all you do. And we don't want you to be nervous or afraid. We're all friends here. Maybe a little bit intimidated, but that's not our intent. But what we want to do is recognize you positively in the best way we can. So if you just join us up front here, I've got a few things to present to you and your parents.
This way, folks. Perfect. 1, 2.
takes off, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Council would like to shake the young lady's hand.
How's she gonna do that? Give Trevor a chance to take a picture.
Parents, Mr. Good, I take it. For your efforts, your motivation.
Oh, Dubé, he's too ugly.
Your worship, did you want to, and council members, did you want to stand at your spot? Sure. And then we'll stand up in front.
Whatever is good for you. You guys tell us.
So, the Zudon family, if you come this way.
You want us in the background?
Yes, sir, if you don't
We
mind.
want us out.
No, we want you in. Don't worry.
Not Beckering though, right?
Not Beckering.
I'll stand beside Beckering.
Come on, Carly, stand on the table.
I want my big shoes today.
I'm not the ident guy.
Oh, you got your finger on top of the lens there.
Thank you, sir.
There's no fast.
You're always putting me in, setting me up. Thanks. Good job. Excellent. You're an example.
Very proud of you.
Thanks. The good news is this is also live stream. You can record that and save it for later. So it's all recording. Congratulations. Way to go.
That should be front page news.
Can we vote on that? Let's make a motion.
All right, thank you. If we could move on to item 7.2, delegation community futures, please. Mr. Armfield.
Would council like to make a motion on that last one?
Yep. Oh, sure. Sorry, yeah, we can do that. Councilor Beckering?
Mr. Mayor, I move the council accepts the presentation from community. Oh, what am I doing? Sean, you can leave, Sean. I'll move the council thanks Blakely Zudhoff for her honesty and integrity in turning in lost cash to the Taber Police Service and commends Ms. Zudhoff for her extraordinary strength of character.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good. Thank you. Once again, item 7.2, Mr. Armfield.
Yes, 7.2, we have Mr. Sean Promell. He's having a hard time figuring out why his mouse won't work, but if he gives me a second, I'll release control here for him. Anyway, each year council budgets $10,000 for a beautification program for the downtown area, and Sean is here to give us an update on how that is working.
All right, thank you. Mr. Promell.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Mayor,
evening.
Council. So I am back again just to give you guys a quick update on how the program's going.
And you can just click through there.
So this is our 4th year running the program. I can give a quick explanation of the program. So it's a beautification loan / grants, we call it, is up to $10,000. 20% of that is grant money, and the loan is interest-free over 3 years. The town of Taber provides the funds for the grant and interest. So these are just the totals for the 4 years. So I get the money once each year. I usually started in April. every year so far, it's taken me about a month or two to get rid of all the funds. So it's been a very demanding program. So I've done 43 loans over the 4 years. You can see the totals there. The grant and interest cost for the town over the 4 years is $119,157. Total cost, the local business investment. So I keep track of every project, even if it goes over and above the dollars that I'm giving the client. So the total investment back into the community is over 2.5 million. I track a list of all the costs, the separate businesses over the 4 years. Again, if you want this information, I can send it in a separate file. And then just after that, I think I have 250 pictures or so. I do my best to try to get out there and get before and afters. It's a lot of work and effort to try to get people while they're doing the renovations. So here's just a few examples of some of them I have before and afters, some of them not. Obviously, I take the best out of the 250 photos I have. Majority, I would say about at least 90% of the renovations, the loans, have been focused on downtown and Main Street as well. A lot of the renovations vary. I'm sure you know a lot of the businesses that have been renovated. And to be honest, with the last 4 years when we started, there's a lot of talk around town. People are noticing all the renovations. I think it has had a big impact on downtown. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have been able to see this already. So even like Integra Tire, I went there a week or so ago and got another update on the picture. I do have, so council has already put me in the budget for the next 2 years, I believe. I have about 6 already inquiries for next year. So they're also, I've been asked a few times, because I haven't done many in the industrial section. It's not that I'm not approaching them. It's typically the answers I get is, even though the paperwork's really easy, the amount of money is not worth their time. That's the feedback I get. Even though some of the loans I've done downtown, for example, in A&W, they spent a lot of money. They probably didn't need it, but they still applied for the program, right? So I don't know if you guys have any feedback for the program. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, there's been no issues with it. It's been working great. I don't know if it really needs to be revamped at this point because it hasn't slowed down at all. If you have feedbacks or changes on what we could do to promote it more to the industrial section, I don't know. I'm definitely open to hearing your thoughts on it.
Great, thank you. Councilor Beckery.
Mayor Sean, the beautification aspect is for exterior only, is it not?
It's for interior or exterior renovations.
So what majority is exterior? It must be majority.
I haven't broken it down between whether they're interior or exterior renovations. I can just come up with those numbers if you want. A lot of the projects have been inside and out. Are you looking for more of a focus on just exterior?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I am, but that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Just a clarification question. I guess you said it's both exterior and interior. Are you finding that they are doing more than the actual monies that are available?
Most of the loans I'm doing are the max. Yeah. I think I've only done a handful that have been under 10,000.
What I'm saying, are some businesses actually going beyond what's available for the monies through this program? Once they start the renovation in that regard, are they doing more?
Well, the $2.5 million investment reflects that, right? Because
right, yeah,
yeah.
And we've been doing this how long in Tabor now? What year is this?
It's 4 years now.
4 years.
Yeah.
And you were doing this elsewhere a few years previous to, were you not?
Previously, we did it in Brooks, and then we did it for a year in Milk River. Successful in both. Brooks is again doing it next year, I believe.
I'd like to commend you 100% for all you've done and continue to do. I think it's a great program, and it does nothing but help the community and help the business beautification side that it's designed for. So it's really a win-win all around for both the business community and the citizens as well. So thank you so much for that.
The only other question I'll ask for feedback is your thoughts on people taking 2 loans. So if the same business is wanting to do a second loan, I'd like to get your thoughts on
Following year or 2
Typically,
years?
I've only done it once where I've done 2 loans for one business. They had the first one paid off, and then I did the second one. And I always shoot for first timers before I go to any, or even get an application from anyone that's already done the loan.
Sure. Any thoughts on that? Anybody? Councillor Thames?
I like your thing. You're going to shoot for first timers, but if you don't get enough first timers and there's still money there and people come for the second loan and they're doing something to improve it, I think your approach is perfect, Sean. To go look for the first timers first, and then if there's still funds there, well, we'll use the second one as long as they're paying it back. I agree with what you're doing.
Mr. Brew?
Mr. Mayor, how much do we give you a year now? What are you asking for?
For 10 loans.
So what's that amount?
30,000.
I'm sorry?
30,000. 20,000 is grant. So max 10 of them I can do. So
your town contributes 30,000.
Yes. 20,000 grant and 10,000 interest.
I am a huge supporter of your program, and I would like to suggest to council that we increase that amount. Because what I've seen done in downtown and other businesses, I think it's great for this town. It helps beautify it, and I think it's a great program. So I'd actually like to see more money put into this program.
I guess just a clarification, is there ever money left over, or are you usually able to use it all up in a given year?
Last year was the first year where I think the last dollars took a few extra months to get out. But again, the first 3 years, the money was gone within a month and a half. It hasn't taken, and to the point now, the first 2 years, I put a lot of effort into marketing it. I talked to a lot of businesses. Now I'm at the point where they know about the program. They're
coming to you
to ask about it, which is
right.
great.
Yeah, it's more than caught on.
The only feedback maybe for the industrial section, I don't know how you get around that, because it's one of those things where, if they're not taking it because it's not enough money to waste their time on, to where I could do 2 loans at the same time for one business in the industrial section. The problem I see is that, why wouldn't an A&W or something like that get the same, right? What makes them special? I can do it based on, the only argument I can think of is that employment-wise. Typically businesses in the industrial section provide a lot more employment. That's something we can recognize as being able to do twice the loan. But at the same time, I don't really want to change something there's nothing wrong with, right?
Yeah, no, I think keeping the rules the same for everybody is fair and reasonable. That's probably the best way to go. Sure, perfect. All right, anything else? Councillor Chavez?
Your Worship, I commend Councillor Bruin for wanting to up it. My question to Mr. Prummel here is, so would it not, being that there's so many businesses that utilize it, would it not be more difficult on a go-forward basis to sell these?
You'd think the demand for it would die down after doing so many businesses. I thought it would die down after the second year or so, but it doesn't seem to be at this point. I don't know if, after doing so many, I don't know if there's enough demand to be doing 20 a year. But if it didn't happen, the money could always be brought into next year's fund, right?
So you're okay with the amount where it is?
More money.
Well, but is there a real need for it, or is it?
So this year when I cut it off, I turned down. Well, I have about 4 applications in a folder waiting for next year.
So they'll go ahead for next year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, in my opinion, I would rather just the the program continue on a year-to-year basis rather than upping it. All right, both ways I'm fine with, because I'll do my best to get the money out no matter what. I don't want to be sitting on money ever, right?
So then status quo would be the best then?
Maybe I would say, in my opinion, let's keep it the same this year, see how the demand, I mean, we're 5th year now, see how the demand goes. I've had 4 or 5 businesses that have already taken out a loan that have expressed interest in getting a second one, right? So it's not like I can't get rid of the money fast, and it's hard to predict the newcomers, right?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, through, how many have neglected paying? Like how many have stuck us with money? Yeah. 0. So it's been a very well.
I've had a few issues that I have to deal with, but it's been good. Yes. I don't even know if we have a monthly payment.
Okay, well, I'm a very strong supporter of this program. I'm surprised that you wouldn't want to expand it, but
I would definitely expand it. I don't want to get to the point where I'm sitting on that money and I can't get rid of it, right? I mean, we can at the other side of it. I mean, we can double it for a year and see how many I can do.
The thing is, you don't have to spend it. It has to qualify for spending. If we can beautify the town or help a business out with making their frontage look better, 100%. Because the downtown looks a lot better because of your program, I believe. So, but if you're not asking for money, we're not going to give it to you.
I would definitely ask for double the money, right? I mean, I put a lot of effort into this program. If we want to double it, I'm gonna put that much effort into getting it out. So far, I've been successful. I haven't not gotten the money out, so maybe it's a goal setting for me. I'm sure I could do it. If you wanted to double it, and then give me the opportunity to do, say, for industrial that I talked about, 2 at one time, which does make quite a bit of difference. Typically, the bigger businesses in the industrial section are spending way over $10,000 on any renovation, right? So, I mean, the response I've gotten a few times is it's just a couple grand, we don't care, right?
Yeah, well, $10,000 will replace the front windows, sort of thing. But it is a nice incentive for businesses to improve the frontage. So,
Mr. Towns.
I understand where you're going with this, Councillor Bruin, but at the end of the day, we have already approved an amended budget for 2020, and I'm of the expressed opinion we have a program there. Those that are willing and want to take the risks in their own business to do this, we're helping them out. I don't think we need to be expanding it quite as of yet. Like you said, it's year 5 coming up. Let's see what happens, if the need is there, but I don't think we need to be looking at expanding it this year.
All right, Councillor Chavez.
Your Worship, I'll just kind of a comment. Of course, if you take a look at the pictures and see the renovation work, and if you take a look at how much money was spent on this whole project, I mean, the $10,000 that's the loan and the $2,000 grant is really just a drop in the bucket, because they've spent way more money than that. So this is it's a small incentive, for people to do that, because they're spending. You look at the figures the dollars that were spent, and it's huge compared to the minuscule amount that was. So I mean, it's unfortunate the business or the industrial community looks at it from that point of view. But I know myself, I spent considerably more than what the program gave out, and it so it. You can spend $100,000 easy, and 10 of it is just a grant, but you have to pay the 8 back anyway. So it's a good program, but I think it pays for itself just to leave it like it is.
All right.
I think that's a good topic we'll see how it goes this year. I can see what kind of demand I have if the money's out in a month or so again. Maybe next year we can talk about. Because it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't seem to be really slowing down, and that's a good thing, right? So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and seeing if we can follow it and see what your progress with it, what we receive for that money next year again. But I'm really a solid supporter of your program there.
All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councilor Bruin.
I can make the motion that council accepts a presentation from Community Futures Chinook regarding the Town of Taber Beautification Loan Program for information purposes.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much for your presentation.
It's good now.
If there's an extra
Yeah,
one,
yours
I'll
is
do
in
it.
the hallway.
All right, on to item 7.3, Canadian Association of Petroleum Procedures. Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, we have Chris Montgomery joining us this evening from the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers to speak about the industry and how we might be able to help them out. Please, Chris, go ahead.
Good. So thanks for having me. Just before we get the presentation up there, I spent a lot of time at town and, well, municipal councils, not just towns, but that first presentation was by far the best thing I've ever seen at a municipal council. So well done on your part. That's pretty cool. Thanks for having me up. My name is Chris Montgomery with the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. And I've run a stakeholder engagement program with CAP for the last 6 years now. We focused most of that time on parts of the West that are featuring a lot of growth in the industry. But this year we want to expand the program into parts of the province that are dealing with other kinds of challenges with the oil and gas industry. And really, for reasons that I'll show you, parts of the province where industry is stepping back quite a lot. And so certainly know the struggles that this part of the province are facing. And it's creating unique challenges for us as an industry association as well. So I'll walk you through some of those and what it is that we're working on, and then happy to take any questions that you have. Okay. So I know it's on the slides, thankfully. Hopefully you guys can see them. If you're not familiar with CAP, as our name suggests, we represent oil and gas producers in the country. We have about 65 members today, and they produce about 80% of all of Canada's oil and natural gas. Always like to start with this slide. This is from the International Energy Agency, and it's their 2017 Energy Outlook. They just actually put out a new one that I haven't had a chance to look at yet. But this looks at energy demand going out to 2040 under the assumption that all those countries that are committed to the Paris Climate Accord fulfill their obligations under the Paris Climate Accord. And so even under that scenario, the world is going to need more fossil fuels than what they're using today. In particular, natural gas, but also increasing demand for oil. Coal is more or less flat, but slight uptick there. And so that's despite the transition to other renewable types of energy. And so the question for the world really isn't whether they're going to use energy. The question is where they get that energy from. And obviously, representing Canadian producers, we feel they should be getting it from Canada. And that, unlike for like resources, we can provide the lowest impact resource to the world. So we would not only provide an economic benefit here at home, we'd actually be providing an environmental benefit around the world as well. Of course, today we can't actually achieve that. So the United States is our only customer, and we can't reach those world markets. We're losing out on North American markets even. So today we can't, our oil pipelines are full. We're losing market share in North America for natural gas. And as a result of that, investment in the sector is declining, despite the fact that around the world it's actually doing fairly well. So this year, we expect a further decline in capital spending of about 8% at the end of the year. So that would be around $36 billion. If you were to look back at 2014, just 5 years ago, the industry invested more than $81 billion worth of capital into the Canadian economy. So we're less than half of where we were just 5 years ago. That withdrawal of capital translates directly into less activity on the landscape. So in 2018, we drilled about 6,100 wells in Western Canada, about 3,300 here in Alberta. This year, we're expecting to come in somewhere around 5,000 wells, so a pretty significant decline of about 18%. About 2,300 of those wells would be drilled here in Alberta. We don't do our 2020 forecast until early 2020 when we have better information from our membership. But PSAC, which represents the service sector and some of the drilling companies, they've put out their 2020 forecast already, and they're expecting around 4,500 wells for 2020. So further a 10% decline from where we were this year. Don't really want to talk about gas prices here. What I want to talk about is the gas market and the challenges that are leading to low and declining prices. Although I have to say in the last month or so, gas prices have been a bit better. So in 2008, we saw a significant drop in gas prices, really as a result of what we call the shale revolution. And this was the fact that we were able to unlock massive reserves of natural gas in North America as a result of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, the combination of those two technologies. And so we thought we were running out of natural gas in North America, and we were building facilities to import that gas from elsewhere in the world. But now we have massive reserves and an oversupply in the marketplace. Canadian producers adapted to those lower prices starting in 2008 by going after what we call liquids-rich natural gas plays. And so these are deep shale basins in the northwest of the province, in British Columbia, that contain not just natural gas, but liquids, and in particular something called condensate, which is a natural gas liquid that's just a little bit lighter than oil. And that condensate, the demand for that is tied directly to the oil sands, because that condensate or diluent is what we use to dilute oil from the oil sands so that it can be moved by pipeline. And so those producers in those liquid-rich areas produce their natural gas almost as a byproduct. And although they would prefer a higher price for the gas, they're not going to stop their production because of low gas prices, because all the economics is in the liquids. And so the consequence of that is if you're a gas producer in southern Alberta and you don't have those liquids, it kills the economics of your gas business, because it's really tough to make money at $1 an MCF. What this chart also doesn't show, because it's monthly average prices, is that there's huge volatility on the gas markets. And so when you've got an average price of $1.50 or so, we are seeing swings sometimes of up to $1 a day. So it's really hard to predict your business going forward. The other thing it doesn't show, again, because it's monthly averages, is we have seen times in the last 3 years where gas prices are actually in the negative. And so that means producers are having to pay people to get rid of their gas. And obviously, under those circumstances, it's very hard to make money. So really the only long-term solution to our gas situation is to get gas off the continent through liquefied natural gas facilities on the west coast of British Columbia. We have one major project underway, under construction, in LNG Canada that would export about 2 billion cubic feet a day. We have other proposals on the books, but that's our long-term hope. But those projects, LNG Canada, will take 4 to 5 years to build. So we have 4 to 5 years of the current situation. And obviously in that time, we will lose additional companies. On the oil side, as I said, the main story here is the fact that our pipelines are full and we can't get product out to market. So we saw the consequence of that last fall. Not only were our pipes full, our storage in Western Canada was full, and we had a false oversupply in the marketplace, which killed the prices for Canadian oil, both light and heavy, and prices were going to zero. I know of one producer who, just trying to get through that period of time, signed a contract for 16 cents a barrel. So they were going to zero. And the market could have taken care of that. It would have taken time. It probably would have been bloody. But ultimately, the province stepped in and put a cap on production, and that corrected prices. Over time, the province has been slowly easing the production cap. They're able to do that in part because we're putting additional compressors and such on existing pipelines in order to increase the efficiency of those pipelines and move more product. But we're going to have the cap in place at least until December 31st, 2020. The other situation that has yet to show up on the marketplace and will have an impact here shortly is the rail strike. And so obviously, we're in a situation where about 400,000 barrels a day are currently moving by rail. Obviously, without that movement, it's going to create some pricing challenges. So that's where we are on the oil front. And again, the only solution there is additional capacity out of the basin. We have 3 projects on the books right now. Enbridge Line 3, which has been built through Canada but is having challenges in Minnesota. Best case scenario for that pipeline is in service about this time in 2021. And then we have Keystone XL and Trans Mountain expansion project. Both of those pipelines, best case scenario is oil's flowing in 2022. So we're going to be in for a couple of difficult years on the oil front as well. Obviously that's the highest priority for industry, is getting additional product moving. But in the meantime, we're working on a few things with the province. The first is their regulatory red tape reduction, which was a key commitment for them to the business community in the province in the last election campaign. We're working closely with them. We put forward a number of proposals that would reduce timelines and reduce the cost of regulation to our industry. And we continue to talk through that. Obviously, the political will is there. The time at which it, for which it is taking to address some of these things has been challenging for our members, but that's just the wheels of government and how they work. But we continue to work through those conversations with the province. The second area that we're working on is municipal taxes. Obviously, the towns and cities aren't really a concern for us. It's really about the rural municipalities and the tax burden there. And particularly in regions like this, municipal taxes can be the #1 operating cost for operators at this point. And that's not specifically signaling out the MD of Taber, by the way. I'm just, in general terms. And so producers are starting to look at things like municipal taxes, their AER fees, their payments to landowners. If those assets are going to continue to be economically viable, those are the things that are going to have an impact over the next while. As an industry association, it's not our job to tell municipalities how to set their budgets and what their tax rates should be. We're focused on a couple areas that we think show some unfairness in the system. The first is how the assessment year modifiers are set for industry. And we have felt over the last few years that they're not reflective of true construction costs and the reality that costs for our industry have come down substantially as a result of the downturn. And then the second is how our assets are depreciated. Again, particularly for older assets, older natural gas assets, there's a huge disparity between the assessment value of these assets on the marketplace as compared to how they're being assessed for the purposes of municipal taxes. And so the province is committed to work on both of those. Again, we continue to have those conversations with them. And then finally, I'll just address, closure, liability, orphan wells, all of that end of life stuff that we're dealing with. What we're seeing over time is that a lot of marginal assets have ended up in the hands of companies that just can't afford to operate them. And a number of them are going bankrupt. There was another announcement just last week or 2 weeks ago now with Houston Oil and Gas that leaves hundreds of wells on the landscape in some cases with no owner. And so we're trying to work with the regulator on a few things. First is a better corporate health test so that the regulator can step in a little bit earlier in the process. Secondly, making sure that we have incentives to have companies close in and reclaim their assets, their sites earlier before they get in trouble. And finally, making sure that we have a healthy orphan well association that can deal with the ones that are left behind, because industry ultimately ends up paying for those wells that don't have an owner. So we have an incentive as an industry to make sure that those assets are being taken care of by companies that are viable. So I'll leave it there and then happy to take any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Montgomery, thank you for the presentation. Is it possible to ship propane east through a pipeline to help our fellow citizens in Quebec?
We generally don't ship propane by pipeline. What we could do, though, is ship oil to the refinery on the island of Montreal, where they can make their own propane.
Thank you, sir. Were you on Daniel Smith last week?
No, I was not.
Okay. Somebody from Capital, he was very bright.
Good.
Councillor Broom.
My question is, all this drop in prices, why are we still paying $1.10 a liter plus or $1 plus a liter for gas?
Yeah, there are a few things that have happened there over the last little while. You still have refining costs, so the barrel of oil is really only one of 4 kind of major inputs into the pricing there. We've seen taxes go up, by a series of governments now. Taxes make up a significant portion of that. And then refining costs, obviously, over time you have inflation and stuff there. We don't represent the refiner, so, I can't speak to their business, but those would be my comments there.
But it seems to me someone's making a lot of money off this, so.
Councillor Thames.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm kind of struck by it, but I'm wondering, when is the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, CAP, going to take their own thing and show to the rest of the world that we are about the environment, that we are good at what we do? When are we going to showcase what we're good at? And I know it's been talked about, and I've heard it, I heard that thing on QR77. But when are you guys really going to take charge of that and say to the government, we are going to push this issue, because that's what's hurting us?
So I think we have made substantial strides there as CAP over the last number of years. We've gotten a lot more sophisticated with our communications as well. I certainly know it's frustrating for Albertans, but we don't spend a lot of time talking to Albertans. Most of our communications efforts, most of our money that we spend on them is really spent in places like Ontario and the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, a bit in Quebec, where we're looking to change the conversation and familiarize other parts of Canada with the industry and the good work that we do there. But most of that is focused on environmental stewardship and innovation to improve our practices over time. We don't do a lot outside the country unless things flare up, just because we represent Canadian producers and we're focused on issues here in Canada. But at different times we have worked within the European Union and in places with respect to the United States as threats have come up, direct threats to the future of the industry here.
I heard a lot about the gas prices, and it's no different than any other day, but I'm just not understanding how just couple 3 hours down the road in Calgary, I saw it as low as 81 in Calgary 2 weeks ago. And how do they justify that at the level here compared to less than 3 hours away for a 30% difference roughly?
No, I hear you. And like I said, we don't represent those guys, but yeah, I filled up in town here this afternoon, and yeah, I was taken aback too by the price that was here as compared to outside my place in Calgary. Where I would point you to there is the Industry Association for the fuel retailers is the Canadian Fuel Association. They've got some stuff there that you can take a look at.
Sorry, who is that?
The Canadian Fuels Association.
Canadian Fuels Association. Okay, CFA. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Thames.
I can understand where for the producers, for you guys, where that's just as big an issue as it is for us sitting at the pumps. Because as the producers, you're wondering, here's what you're getting, and you're giving me 16 cents a barrel so I can keep my doors open. You guys must be as frustrated with that as everybody else. But, I think it's our message that we are this good at what we do that needs to get out. And I like the fact that, are you making inroads in Quebec and Ontario?
Yeah, so we have seen significant movement over time. So where you don't see a lot of movement when it comes to do you support the industry or not? Although we have seen changes over time there. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these conversations around values. Where we've made an impact is, when we started out with the program, our Canadian Energy Citizens program that we have, and talking directly to Canadians that are inclined to support the industry. we started that program about 5 years ago. We now have, close to 500,000 Canadians that we can reach directly. And so on the metrics where we have seen a difference is when we started that program out, by a measure of 3 to 1, people that were opposed to development, really under any circumstances, they were prepared to speak out on our issues, as compared to supporters of the industry. And over the period of 5 years, we've effectively closed that gap, and now it's about a 1-to-1 ratio. So the conversation in the public sphere is much more balanced now than when it was a few years ago, and that's where it matters to politicians. Is what's the conversation out there, and how does it impact voting? We still have to deal. Most Canadians are not going to be on either extreme. They're going to be in the middle. And most Canadians want to hear what you're talking about is that we share their concerns when it comes to the environment, and that we're prepared to do better over time. And so that's what we try to communicate to those folks.
Mr. Stravos.
Your Worship, my question goes back to the red tape reduction. Can you clarify a little bit in the red tape reduction things that you're asking for? Are these environmental concerns? Are they things that have been in place for a long period of time, or is it a short term change that have happened in the short term?
Yeah, for the most part, they're longer term issues.
So they've been around for a while.
Yeah. So when the AER was formed, it was a number of regulators coming together, and part of that commitment that the province made at that time was to reduce timelines and make the system more efficient and therefore less costly. And we really haven't seen the fruits of that. And then to your first point, I want to be clear. This is not about changing regulatory outcomes. We have very strong outcomes when it comes to the environment and when it comes to health and safety. Where our concerns are is that the timelines to get approvals have gone in the wrong direction over the last number of years. And the cost of the regulation has continued to rise as well. So it's really about cost and efficiency. It's not about outcomes.
So just a kind of a follow-up question, of course, on the news now and social media, you see this Moose Lake issue. So is that one of the type of things that some things progress too quickly and some kind of take a long time to get through?
Yeah, so on Moose Lake, I'm not super familiar with the details, and it's it's a multi-year conversation that's taking place there. And so, it's not that we don't have to have some of these difficult conversations when it comes to, the impacts that we're having with large projects, particularly this large oil sands project. So we should be having the conversation about how we're impacting the environment and ways we can mitigate that, and how we're having an impact on First Nations and how we can mitigate that. But we need to be having those conversations in a much more condensed time frame that are still meaningful and still get to the right answers, but not be taking 4 or 5, sometimes longer in years. That's really the kind of thing we're talking about. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council accepts the delegation presentation from the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers for information purposes.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good. Thank you. We'll just ask for a motion. Oh, sorry. I guess we got to go through media inquiries left. Trevor, Tabor Times. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Next is a closed session requirement. Motion to move into closed session, please. Councillor Bruin.
I move that we move into closed session.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.